Good morning, everyone. I'm Ezekiel Jan A. Corpus of BSc 1-10, and this is my report. Battered woman syndrome, postpartum stress syndrome, and postpartum psychosis. Battered woman syndrome. What is battered woman syndrome? Overview. A serious long-term domestic abuse can result in a mental disorder called battered woman syndrome. Battered woman syndrome, which is also sometimes called battered wife syndrome. Battered wife syndrome is considered a subcategory of post-traumatic stress disorder or PTSD. With battered woman syndrome, a woman may develop a learned helplessness that causes her to believe she deserved the abuse that she can't get away from it. In many cases, it's why women don't report their abuse to police or avoid telling friends and family what's really going on. Battered woman syndrome is a serious, which is why it is taken into account in homicide cases when women murder their abused partner. So, what is battered woman syndrome? So, before anything else, let's define a battered woman syndrome. Battered woman syndrome or a battered person syndrome is a psychological condition that can develop in a person experiencing abuse, usually at the end of an intimate partner. People who find themselves in an abusive relationship often do not feel safe or happy relationship, may be heterosexual or same-sex. How does it develop or paano siya na-obtain yung ganong klase ng experience or ng phenomenon? Women become trapped in abusive relationship for many reasons, which can include financial independence on the abuser, which is often manufactured by the abuser. So dito, kaya siya nagkaroon ng reason para bugbugin ka or saktan ka is kasi naasa ka sa kanya. You are financially dependent doon sa asawa mo. Kumbaga, wala kang choice or wala kang nasasaktan ng ganyan kasi siya yung nagpapakain sa'yo or siya yung bumubuhay sa'yo kasi nga asawa ka lang. Wanting to have a complete family unit for their children's sake. Dito, kahit na binubugbog ka, kahit na alam mo namang nasasaktan ka, kahit sinasaktan ka, hindi ka makabitaw kasi nga gusto mo ng buo pamilya mo. Gusto mong lumaki na may tatay at nanay yung mga anak mo or anak mo. Being afraid to live. Dito naman kaya nakalagay na being afraid to live kasi baka mayroong mga variables ng buhay or factors ng buhay mo na hindi mo maiwan. Kasi nga, kasal ka. Pwedeng may sakit yung magulang mo. Pwedeng yung family mo nakaasa sa family ng isa. Pwedeng yung anak mo ayaw kasi gusto ng kumbaga meron na siyang sa school, kunwari yung classmate niya. Hindi buo yung family niya, pinagtatawanan, 'di ba? Ganon yung mga reason ng being afraid to live. Disbelief or denial that the partner is actually abusive. Dito, 'di ba, sinasabi nila love is blind but your neighbors are not. Dito, kahit sinasabi ng mga kapitbahay mo na bakit ka pa nagtitiis, bakit mo nilalagyan ng bakod sa sarili mo. Ayaw mong maniwala sa sinasabi ng iba kasi nga it's either mahal mo or meron kang kukuhang reciprocal sa kanya. Kunwari, yung pag minahal mo kapag nagtagal ka mabubuhay yung family mo, mabubuhay yung anak mo, kaya tinideny mo sa sarili mo na hindi siya abusive. Next is, what are the signs? Battered woman syndrome results in several distinct symptoms. A woman in abusive relationship may think abuse is her fault. Kumbaga dito parang magkakaroon ka ng self-doubt sa sarili mo kung anong kulang sa'yo. Kung iniisip mo lagi na kasalanan ko, kasi iniisip mo lagi na kasalanan mo, kasi may pagkukulang ka or meron kang mga bagay na hindi mo na nagagawa. Meron kang mga bagay na nagawa na ayaw ng partner mo. Hide the abuse from friends and family. Dito man, it is common to do such thing kasi hindi lang naman sarili mo yung pinoprotektahan mo. Pinoprotektahan mo yung image ng family mo, image ng anak mo, dignity mo, yon ganun. Fear for her life of the lives of her children. Dito man, very common. na kakatakutan mo yung buhay ng anak mo kasi isa yun sa mga factors ng pag stay mo. Over-experience that kind of treatment kasi nga andun yung anak mo or baka close yung anak mo dun sa tatay mo. Tatay mo o tatay niya, ganun. You rationally believe that the abuser is all-knowing and can see her every movement. Dito parang nag-overthink ka na. Parang wala ka na sa tamang pag-iisip mo na ang naisip mo na lang lagi ay lahat ng galaw mo nakikita niya, lahat ng galaw mo malalaman niya kasi nga naapektuhan na yung mental state mo sa kaya di ka makapag-desisyon ng tama. Treatment. So here are some treatment. The first step in treating battered woman syndrome is to get the woman to a safe place away from her abuser. She isn't safe until she does this. Form a safety plan and getaway plan without the abuser. It was also good to have a doctor examine any injuries that may have been sustained in the abuse. As is the name treatment, dito natin malalagay na ilayo natin siya dun sa abuser niya. I mean, whether it is a girl or a man, mabuti na rin na ilayo natin siya. Any perspective. I mean, social, emotional, physical, ilayo natin siya dun kasi hindi niya yun magiging hindi yun magiging healthy para sa status ng isang babae. And after that, pwede ka nang mag-inquire ng doctor para ma-examine yung mga injuries mo or kung meron kang mga lamat yan, mga ganun. Next, the therapist should also evaluate for other mental health conditions and factors that may have contributed to the woman not recognizing the abusive relationship in the early stages. Dito dapat magkaroon ka na ng sarili mong therapist, kumbaga mag-undertake ka na ng exam, mga test, para masukat nila yung status ng mental health mo or condition ng mental health mo. Meron talaga dyan na di mo alam na stress ka na pala, depressed ka na pala, na akala mo malungkot ka lang, kaya kailangan mo na ng professional therapist. Next is anxiety and depression can result from battered woman syndrome. The therapist will use a combination of anti-anxiety medication, antidepressant medication, and talk therapy to help the woman regain control of her life. Dito naman parang naulit lang yung mga sinabi ng nakaraan. Dito ay gagawin na yung treatment or iti-treatment ka na nila. Dito gagawa na nila ng paraan yung nararamdaman mo. Pwede ka nang painumin ng anxiety medications, yung mga gamot na hindi ka mag-overthink. May gamot na magiging stable yung utak mo. Pwede kang painumin ng antidepressant medication, mga magliwaliw ka, ganon. Ibahin mo yung mood mo, ibahin mo yung atmosphere na ginagalawan mo para makontrol mo ulit yung buhay mo, ganon. How to get help. If you think you have battered woman syndrome, it is important to get help right away. Reach out to support system as soon as possible. If you feel comfortable doing so, you can also go to a therapist or call a domestic abuse hotline whose numbers you can find on the following pages. Dito, andito na yung mga organizations na pwedeng tumulong sa'yo, yung mga tao na or yung mga grupo na of people na kaya kang tulungan. Kumbaga, matutulungan ka nila kang makakapag-plan ka kung paano ka makakaalis, kung paano kaya makakalis ng anak mo kung meron na. One, national condition, domestic violence, NCADV, yun, pwede mo silang lapitan. The National Domestic Violence Hotline. The therapist and hotline can help provide you with the resource and information such as where to find shelter. They can also help you develop a safety plan to get away from the abuser. So, next po natin ay postpartum stress syndrome. So, for postpartum stress syndrome is more generally understood as an adjustment into the experience of the motherhood and development life changes that occur after birth of the baby. Sabi nga ni Dr. Mendez, it includes adapting to new roles, adjusting to obligation and theories, and learning how to navigate multiple relationship and tasks. Occurring in being the period following childbirth, postpartum depression to being in or used in the postpartum period, postpartum mothers, other words, postpartum. Yung postpartum depression kasi kind siya ng depression kung saan mararamdaman after birth ng bata, kaya nga post meaning tapos na. Tapos ang mga signs niya are feeling of sadness and anxiety for no reason, changes in sleeping and eating patterns, and lastly poor connection. Next is postpartum blues. Postpartum blues, commonly known as baby blues. It's a transient postpartum mood disorder characterized by milder depressive symptoms that postpartum depression. This type of depression can occur in up to 80% of all mothers following delivery. Symptoms typically resolve within 2 weeks. Yung baby blues naman, halos same lang siya ng postpartum depression. Mas malala lang yung depression, kumbaga anxiety pa lang siya over something. Technically speaking, while some of the symptoms sounds the same, postpartum depression is different from the baby blues. Postpartum depression is a lot more powerful and lasts longer. It follows about 15% of birth in first-time moms and those who given birth before. It can cause severe mood swings, exhaustions, and a sense of hopelessness. Next is postpartum psychosis. Postpartum psychosis. Postpartum psychosis are where conditions that typically develop within the first week after the delivery. The signs and symptoms are severe. What is postpartum psychosis? Postpartum psychosis is a serious mental health illness that can affect someone soon after having a baby. It affects around 1 in 500 mothers after giving birth. Many people who have given birth will experience mild mood changes after having a baby, known as the baby blues. This normally and usually only lasts for a few days. But postpartum psychosis is very different from the baby blues. It's serious mental illness and should be treated as a medical emergency. And ayon po sa aking nakuha sa postpartum psychosis, meron po akong nalakop na informasyon or meron akong nakuha na signs and symptoms that may included: 1. Confusion and disorientation. Pangalawa, obsessive thoughts about your baby. Pangatlo, hallucinations and illusions. Pang-apat, sleep disturbance. Panglima, excessive energy agitation. Pang-anim, paranoia. And lastly, attempts to harm yourself or your baby. Causes. We're not sure what causes postpartum psychosis, but you're more at risk if you have a family history of mental health illness, particularly postpartum psychosis. Even if you have no history of mental illness, develop postpartum psychosis after a previous pregnancy. So dito parang hindi pa nade-determine ng mga therapists kung ano ang medium or kung ano ang source ng postpartum psychosis. Pwedeng isang factor na sinasabi nila, baka pwede ito na namana mo sa tatay mo or namana mo sa nanay mo, ganyan. Ayun, ganyan. When to get medical help. Postpartum psychosis is a serious mental illness that should be treated as a medical emergency. It can get worse rapidly and the illness can risk the safety of the mother and baby. Ang postpartum psychosis ay isang serious, severe na mental illness na kailangan gamutin or i-treat as soon as possible bago pa may mangyari na masama sa mismong nanay itself o sa baby. Treating postpartum psychosis. Treatment usually happens in hospital. Ideally, this will be with your baby in a specialist psychiatric unit called a mother and baby unit or MBU. But you may be admitted to a general psychiatric ward until an MBU is available. Kumbaga dito, kapag nasa hospital ka na, doon ka mapupunta sa MBU unless wala pa siyang space. Pero pwede ka din ma-admit sa general psychiatric ward until ang MBU ay available na. Supporting people with their recovery. People with postpartum psychosis will need support to help them with their recovery. Kailangan ng mga taong may postpartum psychosis ng moral support or physical support and financial support. You can help your partner, relative, or friend by being calm and supportive. Dito kahit wala kang matutulong, kahit alam mo sa sarili mo na wala kang capacity na tumulong, at least Maging kalmado ka lang, maging supportive ka, supportahan mo yung positive actions niya na pwede niyang gawin. Taking time to listen. Dito, puhunanan mo siya ng oras ng pakikinig. Pakinggan mo yung mga kwento niya para malesen yung mga negative thoughts niya na naiisip. Helping with housework and cooking. Tulungan mo or ikaw na ang gumawa para sa kanya. O samahan mo siya, huwag mo siyang hayaan mag-isa. Helping with childcare and nighttime feeds. Dito kasi pag may anak ka lalo at bagong panganak, kailangan niyang magpalit ng diaper, painom ng gatas, yan, pag gutom. Samahan mo siya, tulungan mo siya, or ikaw na lang ang gumawa para sa kanya. Letting them get as much sleep as possible. Patulugin mo siya ng average na tulog ng gaya ng isang tao, 8 hours and above, di ba? Huwag mo siyang abalahin, hayaan mo siya magpahinga, ganun. Letting them get as much as sleep as possible. Patulugin mo siya. Ang average naman ng tulog ng isang tao kasi ay 8 hours and above, di ba? Huwag mo siyang abalahin, hayaan mo siya magpahinga, ganun. Helping with shopping and household chores. Sabi ko nito kanina. Keeping the home as calm and quiet as possible. Kailangan dito dapat peaceful lang yung place. Walang masyadong ganap, walang masyadong ingay, dapat peaceful lang, ganun. Not having too many visitors. Huwag ka munang magpapapunta ng mga bisita, huwag ka munang magpapapunta ng kung sino-sino habang ikaw ay nagtitreatment pa. Yan, tapos na po. Maraming salamat po sa pakikinig.